Welcome to the Explainer. You know, we often talk about doing good, but what does that really mean? It seems so simple, right? Well, today we're going to unpack that. We're diving into the philosophies behind giving, and trust me, it's way more complicated than you might think.
So let's start with this quote from writer Katie Butler. She lays it out pretty simply, right? When you have extra money, you can spend it, invest it, or give it away. But that third one, give it away, that's where things get really interesting. It kicks off this huge, fascinating debate.
Yeah, is it really that simple? The moment you decide to give, you're hit with another question, a much harder one. What's the best way to do it? Do you follow your heart, that gut feeling of compassion, or do you follow your head with a cold, hard calculation of what's going to have the most impact? And that right there is the big question we're tackling today.
All right, to really get into this debate, we've got to start with a pretty shocking idea, the problem with charity itself. And this critique comes from one of the biggest givers in history, a guy who basically warned that all our good intentions, they might actually be doing more harm than good. Take a look at this number, $350 million. That's the fortune Andrew Carnegie gave away. I mean, think about that. And this was a guy who came to America as a penniless immigrant. But for him, it wasn't about the amount. It was all about how that money was used. He was absolutely obsessed with making sure every dollar had the maximum possible impact.
And his warning, wow, it's pretty brutal. He basically said of every $1,000 spent on so-called charity, 950 of it is probably wasted. He believed that most of it doesn't fix anything. In fact, he thought it could actually make things worse by encouraging people to be dependent, to be lazy, the very things it's supposed to be fighting.
He called this indiscriminate charity, like when you give a quarter to someone on the street. Carnegie's take, he'd say that's not really about helping them. It's about you. It's a selfish little act to make yourself feel good, to get rid of that feeling of annoyance. I know, it's a really tough way to look at it, but this idea is absolutely central to his whole philosophy. So this tough, logical viewpoint leads us straight into the first big philosophy we're looking at today, giving with the head. Think of it like a social investment, a strategic, almost business-like approach where logic and long-term results are king. And that warm, fuzzy feeling you get, well, that's not the point.
And here's the key difference he saw. On one hand, you've got charity. That's about immediate needs, giving food to someone who's hungry right now. But on the other hand, you have philanthropy. That's about building systems to fix the root cause of the problem. You're not just giving a fish, you're building a whole fishing industry, a library, a university, things that lift up the entire community. So here's Carnegie's list of these 7 best uses for wealth. Take a look. See a pattern here? Universities, libraries, hospitals, parks. Every single one of them is a tool for self-improvement. He wasn't interested in just giving handouts. He wanted to give people a ladder, a way to help themselves climb up. And hey, Carnegie wasn't the only one thinking this way. You've got guys like Benjamin Franklin, who was all about practicality. He was setting up fire departments, libraries, things that made the entire community better. He knew that a rising tide lifts all boats, including his own. It was just a smart social investment. And this quote from Jamsetji Tata, man, it really puts a fine point on it. He completely dismissed what he called patchwork philanthropy. He said, look, the best way to help a nation isn't to just prop up the weakest people. The real game changer is to lift up the best and the brightest, the most gifted, so they can be of the greatest service to everyone else.
Okay, so that is a very strong case for giving with the head. It's logical, it's strategic, but there's a whole other side to this. A powerful counter-argument that says all this focus on systems and efficiency, it completely misses the point of what it means to be human, what it means to give. So now let's talk about giving with the heart. And you know who saw this other side? John D. Rockefeller, a guy you'd think would be right there with Carnegie. He noticed that the most generous people, the ones who really give, are often the poor. They're the ones sharing the little bit they have with a neighbor who's in trouble. And to him, that direct human act of compassion, it made all those huge calculated donations from millionaires look kind of insignificant. This story about a student named Rajesh just illustrates it perfectly. So Rajesh is struggling to pay a small bill. He applies to this big official trust for help. And what happens? The trust starts its slow, bureaucratic process of verifying his case. But in the meantime, his fellow students hear about his problem.
They don't form a committee or run the numbers. They just feel for the guy, they pass a hat around, and they solve his problem right then and there, long before the big, head-driven organization could even get its paperwork in order. And here is where you really see the clash of these two worlds. You have philanthropist Julius Rosenwald, who just dismisses this kind of emotional giving. He literally calls it sob stuff. For him, it's all about aiding groups, masses, not individuals. But then you get this powerful, powerful rebuttal from the heart, Mother Teresa. She said, if you judge people, you have no time to love them. For her, asking why someone was suffering or if they were deserving of help, that was a complete waste of time. All that mattered was that someone was in pain, and our job was to serve them, to love them, to act right now. So here we are with this huge conflict, right? You've got Carnegie's cold, hard strategy on one side and Mother Teresa's direct, compassionate service on the other. So, is one right and the other wrong? Do we have to choose? Or is there maybe some common ground here? Well, it turns out that even though the methods are worlds apart, building a massive library versus just giving someone a meal, they might both spring from the exact same place. Because it all comes back to the word itself, philanthropy. What does it actually mean? It literally means the love for human beings. And when you look at it that way, everything clicks. Whether it's a super calculated, strategic plan to build a system, or a simple, spontaneous act of kindness, the driver is the same. It's a fundamental love for other people. And that brings this whole thing right back to you, to us, because this isn't just some old debate between rich guys and saints from 100 years ago. It's a question we all have to answer for ourselves. When you decide to give, whether it's your time or your money, what do you follow? Your head or your heart?